I am not interested in creating clones of Dennis Perrin. I want to empower people to find their own artistic voice. This was a photograph of what I was seeing, and then here's my initial drawing, and I will further develop that drawing as I search for and locate my value shapes. We call this also a value map, and this allows me to find all those places where I'm going to be putting my large simple shapes, bringing in the lights as well. Okay, we're going to be covering the canvas now in these simple value shapes, and you can see I begin with, of course, the darkest shape, and you'll see here on my palette that darkest shape in a little pile of paint, and that begins my palette discipline at that point. And then moving on to the next shape, I'm moving from dark to light as always, and that's what comes next, my next darkest shape, and again the palette reflects this. Now we're going to be missing a few of these palette photos for a while, but we'll catch back up in a few minutes. And again, we're going to move on to our next shape. Here we're moving through our value scale, and we're putting those shapes down. And again, they're not bound by the subject or the elements of the subject, the things in the subject. They're simply families of values. They share the same values. Moving through finally towards our lighter shapes, and eventually the canvas is covered with paint. Okay, and now we're going to see the palette at this point, and the palette reflects what we've done on the canvas. This is a little farther along actually, because you can see some variations within these puddles. So this is a farther along photograph. Now I'm beginning to work inside those major shapes for variations in color, temperature, value. The palette shows that each one of those things each one of those piles have begun to evolve and develop as the painting does. So the palette parallels the evolution of the painting. Again, more shifts in temperature, in value, in color, and the palette is reflecting this. I like to have my palette parallel the evolution of my painting, and as we go along you can see the further development of the painting. Again, I call this the refinement stage, and the palette continues to evolve with the painting, develop along with the painting. And further, you can see details beginning to emerge, reflected light in the pillow, details in the head and the face, and the palette reflecting these changes. This is how things move along in the painting process, the Perrin method. Now you can really see that I'm closing in on my original vision for this painting. That original vision guides me through this process, taking it even a step further as we go, beginning to develop the details, those details. But it's a continuous evolution, palette evolving and changing right along with the painting itself. Now we're really getting close here. You can see things really starting to emerge, identifiable, transitional things from one shape to the next, edges starting to transition from dark to light, and those individual details emerging as the palette provides us the opportunity to create Now we're really getting close. Vivid color, contrast, bringing up the lights, bringing up the contrast, cooling, warming. Really close at this point, and I think we're going to tip right into the final version here. And then up comes a photograph of the palette right here at the end of the process. Alright, let's get some video in place. I got my value map here. Everything's in place for me to start painting. And we're going back through the process, but this time with video. And we're going to at times speed up, and at times we'll slow things down, depending on what we are doing at the time. Right now I am mixing the initial color and value for my darkest value, and I'll start putting it on the canvas, and then we'll slow it down to show you how deliberate and how evenly painted I put the paint down. I'm using a big brush at this point, and I'm painting it very evenly. I want to have enough paint on my brush so there is no sound of the brush scraping across the canvas. Essentially, the tips of the brush never touch the canvas. We use the brush as an application tool only, but we paint with paint, not with brushes. Important point. Alright, we'll get a couple more strokes down. Just wanted you to see how the paint is applied. At this point, we'll speed things back up and we'll get on with the covering of the canvas. Now what I'm doing is approximating where the darkest darks will be on the finished canvas. I'm letting that image of the final painting that I created in my mind through my visualization, I'm letting it guide me through the painting. We're going to move things along. I'll keep it at a little good pace here so I can show you how that paint goes on in the initial stages of the canvas. I'm into my second value now. I'm moving, of course, always from dark to light. I'm staying very general. There's no detail here. It's all about the big, simple families of values. Shapes, I like to call them shapes. Big, simple shapes.